Across the country, cameras are catching brazen criminals in the act.
Taking everything from that colony.
Well-known businesses like Walgreens are closing stores in downtown San Francisco.
Where you want to go?
This is going to take years to correct this, if we even can.
Pictures from victims came flooding in. Broken glass is such a common sight in San Francisco. So are clips of criminals breaking into cars, even with people inside them. Remember this rush hour heist last year? And this violent robbery of a Canadian camera crew at gunpoint on Twin Peaks 2 weeks ago.
Oh my God. You have a gun. Stay in here.
Get down, get down.
Now, for the first time, we're seeing what appears to be the next step in the criminal enterprise, an open-air market for stolen goods at Garfield Square in the Mission District, often when kids are playing soccer just feet away.
In December 2016, San Francisco was awarded as the best city to live in America. But as you can see from the videos we just played, that San Francisco has taken a turn for the worst. We also need to keep in mind that San Francisco wasn't always like this. Being the second most densely populated city in the entire US, San Francisco was also ranked as the 5th global financial center in September 2021, which helped its residents earn the 7th highest income in the country with a per capita income of $139,400. It's not like the city is running out of money. So what happened? Why is there a sudden surge in crime in the city that has never been witnessed before? Well, this happened. Chesa Boudin, a San Francisco district attorney who was mistakenly appointed by the innocent San Francisco voters in the 2019 election. Why was it a mistake? Well, let's take a look at the crime statistics before Boudin came into office. In 2018, the crime rate fell by 3%. The number of homicides fell by 6%. And from 2014 to 2018, property crime was decreasing every day. However, since Boudin came into the picture in 2019, crime has exploded. A total of 49,685 crimes were recorded, whereas between 2014 to 2019, 56,000 to 63,000 crimes were recorded, which means around 5 years' worth of crime was committed in 2021 alone. 7,217 burglaries were recorded in 2021, which is 40% higher than 2019, and theft from vehicles increased by 39%. So what is Boudin really after? And why during the 2019 interview he said, "Why do we need to take people to jail for nonviolent offenses if what they really need is drug treatment or mental health services?" Well, there's an extremely high possibility that Boudin was attempting to lay down the groundwork for a Marxist ideology to do his part to help usher in a new America. And step one was the intentional release of criminals back into the streets. This may seem like a conspiracy theory that I'm trying to sell you, but if you look into Boudin's past, you'll realize he's come from a family lineage of Marxists. Boudin's great-granduncle, Louis B. Boudin, was a well-known author of Marxian principles, and his grandfather, Leonard Boudin, was also a well-known civil rights lawyer who proudly represented communist dictator Fidel Castro. So is it because of his Marxist ideology, or more commonly known as progressive left agenda, that the good people of San Francisco had felt it necessary to oust Chesa Boudin in a recall election on June 7th? Okay, my friends, let's take a closer look together.
San Francisco, a backlash against rising crime has led to an effort tonight by Democrats.
What has us concerned is widespread increases in crime.
There is nothing you can do, and it's really kind of the luck of the draw.
San Francisco yesterday voted to fire its left-wing progressive prosecutor, Chesa Boudin.
I'm so sorry, and my work is not done. My work is not done until everybody in this city is safe and feels safe.
Oh
of Boudin and his Marxist roots began tragically when he was 14 months old, and he saw his parents, Kathy Boudin and David Gilbert, getting arrested for robbing a Brinks truck in Rockland County, New York. Being members of a radical Marxist group called Weather Underground, Boudin's parents led a violent communist revolution in America and bombed government buildings across the country. Kathy was sentenced to 20 years in prison, and David was sentenced to 75 years to life for murdering 2 police officers and a security guard during that robbery. Now, the roots of building his radical thought process did not just end there. Because his parents were sentenced to prison, he was raised by his adopted parents, Bill Ayers and Bernadine Dorn, who were also members of the same Marxist group his parents were in, the Weather Underground. So the question is, did David and Kathy have a plan for their son? Is that why they wanted him to be raised by the members of their beloved Marxist group? Not to forget, in 1970s, Boudin's adopted parents, Ayers and Dorn, were listed on the FBI's top 10 most wanted list. Now, the Marxist revolutionary mindset was nurtured in Boudin as he learned about the level of contribution made by his grandfather and great-granduncle in carrying forward Marxian ideologies into this world. Now, to give you a glimpse of what Karl Marx believed, wrote, and shared with the world, here's a short passage from his evil book, The Communist Manifesto. He said, "Armor with revolutionary class consciousness, the proletariat will seize the major means of production, along with the institutions of state power, police, courts, prisons, and so on, and establish a socialist state that Marx called the revolutionary dictatorship of the proletariat. The proletariat will thus rule its own class interest in order to prevent a counter-revolution by the displaced bourgeoisie. Once this threat disappears, however, the need for the state will also disappear. Thus, the interim state will wither away and be replaced by a classless communist society." Now, coming back to the mindset of Boudin, who was born and brought up under the ideology, you won't be surprised to know that before joining law school, Boudin traveled to Venezuela, America's stark opponent, to serve as a translator for Venezuelan socialist dictator Hugo Chavez. And he also co-wrote a book in 2005 called Understanding the Venezuelan Revolution. Now that he has really solidified his Marxist ideology, he decided to attend Yale Law School, where far-left ideals would not be questioned as these institutes have been taken over by far-left progressives. After completing his degree, he began working at the San Francisco Public Defender's Office. And in 2019, he quickly shot to the high position of San Francisco District Attorney. Now, one must be wondering how Boudin, who never served as a prosecutor, managed to become San Francisco District Attorney by replacing experienced DA George Gaskin, who held this position from 2011 to 2019. Well, that's where left-wing billionaire George Soros enters. You see, George, like Karl Marx, loves the idea of controlling the judicial system because he believes that if you control the judicial system, you control everything. Let me explain to you how determined Soros is in controlling the judicial system in America. In 2016, Soros spent more than $3 million on 7 local district attorney campaigns in 6 states. His money supported radical candidates like Boudin to carry forward his goals of reducing racial disparities in sentencing and directing some drug offenders to diversion programs instead of conducting serious trials on them. So what happens to the judicial system when a billionaire-backed district attorney with no experience grabs a valuable seat in the society by throwing lies in front of innocent people during elections? A steep rise in the crime rate is what happens. Let's go over a few examples. In 2021, overdoses of fentanyl drugs, because of which President Trump wanted to blow up drug labs in Mexico, took more lives in San Francisco than the COVID-19 fatalities. By being soft on repeat offenders to execute his Marxian ideology, Boudin in 2015 released Troy Raymond McAllister, a repeat offender with 3 federal felony convictions. And because of that weak and intentional decision, on December 31st, 2020, when everyone was celebrating the coming of the new year, Troy Raymond McAllister struck and killed several pedestrians while driving a stolen vehicle drunk and high on drugs. And here is yet another example of what happens when the DA is weak on crime and repeat offenders. Take a look.
We have new video of an armed robbery in San Francisco's Noe Valley neighborhood. It is just one of several similar incidents in the area in the past several weeks. KPIX 5 reporter Betty Yu has more on the 3 suspects now facing charges.
Surveillance video shows a commotion on 22nd Street. Someone yells, "I got a gun," and "Give me your phone." Police say 2 people chased the victim, surrounded and stole from him before running into a waiting SUV. This is a 3rd robbery committed by the same suspects in less than an hour on Wednesday, according to SFPD.
And since Boudin has come into office around 51, which is 1/3 of lawyers either left or were fired from the district attorney office. With a rising death toll and rising crime all over San Francisco, Chesa Boudin carelessly said in an interview that he did not want to prosecute minor offenses. He simply wanted to shift his focus towards more serious offenses and take on corporations. I want to read to you a quote from Boudin. "I want to restore a sense of compassion. That's just a true motivating fact that we do have compassion for victims, compassion for the community, compassion for the family members of people who are accused of committing crimes, and compassion for the people who themselves have caused harm." Now, it's true that criminals need to be rehabilitated to lower the chance of being a repeat offender in the future, but the way Boudin has handled the situation openly shows how radical he truly is. Furthermore, it was unwise of him to fire 1/3 of the staff at the district attorney's office, especially when they are the ones who are responsible for prosecuting the influx of crime. Thankfully, on June 7th, when San Francisco voters were simply asked, "Shall Chesa Boudin be removed from the office of district attorney?" more than 61.3% of voters selected yes. According to a petition filed by the San Francisco Board of Elections that received 83,000 signatures from removing Boudin from office, it said more than 61.3% of voters selected yes. According to a petition filed by the San Francisco Board of Elections that received 83,000 signatures for removing Boudin from office, said Boudin is not keeping San Francisco safe. He refuses to adequately prosecute criminals and fails to take the drug dealing crisis seriously. He doesn't hold serial offenders accountable, getting them released from custody, and his response to victims is that hopefully home burglaries will go down. This is just one example of the Marxists that are among us. I'd like to thank you all for spending time with me, and don't forget to watch this video right up here. And join me tomorrow at the same time, and we'll discuss more truths happening in America. Have a good night, and I'll see you next time.